Hello and good morning, Bethel Atlanta. Welcome to another unusual and slightly different service. I'm Blake Healy.
I'm Dan Weber.
And, we had to cancel the last 2 weeks of Bethel Atlanta. We had a couple of cases of COVID pop up. And so wanted to take advantage of that a little bit and have kind of a fun little different kind of thing like we did a few months ago with Jen and Justin. We were able to have kind of more of a discussion time. And me and Dan were the ones who jumped on the opportunity.
Not quite your Jen and Justin, but we'll see how we measure up.
Our net prettiness is definitely lower, I think. Definitely lower. But I put on my nice sweater, so we're trying. We're trying. Awesome. Yeah. So because of the discussion format, I thought there was something that kind of in this format, in this form factor, is something that was a little bit easier to probably talk about, kind of chit chat about was something that's kind of been on my mind this past year. It's 2021 now, and 2020 was a very interesting year in about a dozen different ways. And kind of one of the subjects that popped up in my mind is this idea of, I guess the best way to kind of put it is like this idea of differentiating beliefs and ideas in a church environment. Now, yeah, so just to kind of give you a little bit of a framework, or at least my lens for this, I know in my kind of church history, I've had a wide variety of different sorts of experiences. And I want to be clear, this isn't just a political thing. It really is an idea thing, but the political example is an easy one. Sure. Where I've grown up in churches where the pastor every 4 years would say, this is who I feel like is the right person to vote for, is the godly person to vote for. Dan shaking his head at me.
Still surprises me.
Yes. I've been at places where it was very much the opposite view, where it's this almost like the Church of Switzerland kind of thing. It's like neutrality. We don't talk about that. We avoid that. Type perspective. And, in this recent year, I've kind of gotten a lot of questions on a lot of different subjects from people of, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And kind of wanted to give a little bit of a cultural perspective on what we are doing, what we do value, and kind of some of the reasons why there are certain things we address certain ways and not others. And so, Dan, I don't know if you have any thoughts or space from there.
It's really good. I think it's definitely a topic for the hour. And, I think as we've gone along, I know even just kind of the way I'm wired, I'll just assume we're all doing what I think we're doing, and then be surprised when I hear these different questions. And I'm like, but I guess it's helpful if we actually dialogue through what it is I think we're doing in terms of the kind of culture we're building, the kind of environment we have, that we're intentionally and on purpose creating. So I guess it'd be helpful to even communicate that even a little bit more with clarity, so that people understand, what we are doing is actually on purpose. So, I think it's fantastic that we're taking a moment, and we have a moment like this just to have a little bit of a convo dialogue about it. So
totally, yeah. And so I think great way to start is again, these are very broad categories, and there's always nuance in between that. But kind of the ones that I listed are, hey, should a pastor be telling people what to choose, what to think, how, or should a pastor be focusing on, or rather a leadership team be focusing on teaching people how to think, or the values and principles behind those things? And so what's kind of your take or experience, just both in Bethel culture in general, but also here?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of my history is all wrapped up in schools of ministries, teaching in schools, running schools. And probably what I have found, I'll joke around with my kids when we're dialoguing through the way people think and what's normal for their friends to be thinking and stuff. And I'll joke around saying, I have a job because, literally my job in schools is shifting the culture of a people of, they used to be told what to think, and now we're empowering how to think. Literally, that's the job. It's like helping people make that transition that, I can think on my own and have my own thoughts and my own ideas, my own opinions, my own dreams, and they don't have to match up with, the consensus or even the leadership or however the viewpoint is, right? But that's literally what we do in a lot of our schools and ministries is some of that, just breaking that stuff down to begin with. Because, if we're talking about the big picture, I'm just going to dive in. You ready to just dive in?
Let's go.
If we're talking about the big picture, right, Jesus, created a culture and an environment where he empowered people. He didn't tell them what to think. He told them how to think. And of course, there's always core values. There's always banks. But really, we're talking about creating an environment. And that's when we say apostolic environment. If you would have heard our message from last time we were together, we're talking about we have an apostolic environment. And in that kind of an environment, it's a very empowering environment. Kind of what a traditional pastoral or pastorate model environment, a little bit more hierarchy. A typical environment like that is going to have a lot more control, a lot more with good intention. Because really, when I talk about this, my caveat is, pastors are doing this or leaders are doing this to really protect our people, and so that we're not led astray. Like that's really the heart behind. That's the motivation. But what ends up happening, the fruit of it is everyone really begins to just rally around what they agree, and they're not empowered on how to think, but they're empowered on what to think, so that we all can agree and to walk together, so to speak, if we're going to take that verse technically out of context, but we can get to that later. So that environment is very traditional church. Mm-hmm. We don't have traditional church. Like what we're doing a lot of times in schools of ministry, when their students are first coming into our environment, hungry for signs and wonders and miracles, first thing I like to tell them is, hey, this isn't going to be your normal church. If you have the expectations of a normal church environment, you'll quickly be let down, because this is just a different environment. It's a very empowering environment. We want you to be responsible for you, think on your own, and empower you to go after what's in your heart. Blake, tell me one thing.
Yes.
You've been married for a while.
I have.
Do you and your wife agree on absolutely everything?
We don't.
Is your relationship built around the fact that you agree on everything that you're doing, where you're going, what's happening?
Thankfully not.
What's it built around? What keeps you together if you don't agree on things?
Wow, it is our choice to commit ourselves to one another, our commitment to the relationship that we share.
The relationship, this is beautiful. I'm glad I teed that up for him. But when we're talking about, as we mentioned, a few weeks ago, an apostolic environment is family, it's relationship. What bonds us all together is the connection and the relational connection and the covenant to walk together. Not that we're even walking the same, agreeing on the same things that we're walking on. It's just that we agree to walk together. You get married. I married my wife. We agreed to walk together. We had no idea what we're going to be walking into. Most people don't. I think that's why we should do it when we're young. Yeah. But that's what you're agreeing with. That's what the covenant piece, the commitment piece, the relational piece. That's what kind of keeps it all together. Because at the end of the day, especially if we begin to promote an empowering environment where people are able to think on their own, dream on their own, go after their own things that they feel in their heart the Lord's leading them in, the natural progression is you're going to have a very diverse environment. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going a million different ways, because imagine that we're all a million different ways. We actually get to see the diversity and the beauty. I'm kind of going off here. Are you? We're fine. You set me up. We're really seeing the beauty of the diversity of the body of Christ when that happens. In Ephesians, it says that we're to, make known to the rulers and principalities of heavenly places the multifaceted, wisdom of God. The very nature of that being true, that we actually do that, is that Blake's going to reveal a facet, a side, an element of God that I would never. And that will only happen if we have an environment that empowers it and says, Blake, reach for the stars, go for it. We believe in you. Whatever is in your heart, how you have a relationship with the Lord, and we trust that you have a relationship with the Lord and how the Lord's leading you. Mm-hmm. The very nature of having an environment like that is you have such mass diversity, which is beautiful. Now, really, the crux of being able to sustain it is going to be our ability to do the relationship, honor, love, peace. That if I don't know how to do that really, really well, man, that environment will blow up.
Totally. Now, one of the questions that I imagine can pop into your mind is, well, if there's all this, freedom, or everyone's we're not gathering around what we believe necessarily, or rather what we agree on, well, what about truth? Like there is absolute truth, right? There is an absolute true thing, and I would agree. His name is Jesus. And I believe that there is an absolute truth. It's not this. What we're not saying is this wishy-washy, everyone can just believe whatever they want thing. That's not it.
Universalistic type of mentality.
No, that's
not where we're going.
But what the way I like to kind of explain this is the humility with which we hold the truth. This is, I believe there's an absolute truth. I believe, and again, I believe his name is Jesus, and I believe that there's a true way to interpret the Bible and all of these things. But I also recognize the truth behind one of the scriptures that I actually find to be the most comforting, which is all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, which is not always a comforting scripture. I find it really comforting because we're all in one group, the having sinned and fallen short of the glory of God group. And that's two different things. That's sinned. We've made choices that have violated our relationship with God, that have been outside the nature of God. But also we've fallen short of the glory of God. We're not perfect. We don't fully understand him. We cannot yet fully see who he is. And to me, that is a beautiful ticket to hold everything that I hold with a nice big scoop of humility. Yeah. I believe that I'm right. There are just about any issue going on, I have an opinion on. I have political views. I have scriptures that I believe should be interpreted a certain way. I have lots of opinions and ideas and beliefs. However, for me, I always want to hold those equally with a good helping of humility of, I could be mistaken. I could have misunderstood. I could have misinterpreted. I could have gotten a bad lesson at some point in my history. And I know all of us have experienced that in our own life. Even sometimes coming to Bethel, we learned some bad lessons that we learned in our past or in our childhood or maybe in old church experiences or whatever else. And so I need to recognize that is still true. I may have learned a lot and gotten a lot more truth and understand the truth a lot more than I did 10 years ago, but I probably still have a whole lot that I need to learn. And so that is what makes room for these other ideas, for these other opinions, for these things that I may fundamentally disagree with, that I may fundamentally not understand, but I leave room because I want to be humble in the way that I hold what I see as the truth, what I see as that, and not only be humble to one another, but humble to the Lord.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
and that's the beauty of it, right? Like when we're functioning like that, it's really the body. As iron sharpens iron, so does one man another. It's really giving room that, we all are on a journey of growing, and we absolutely need each other, and we need everyone's perspective. Some of my favorite testimonial stories is when I had a student that, went through several years of a school that I was, a leader in, then only to a couple years later be sitting in a conversation and he's leading me. And I'm getting revelation by stuff he's talking about. And I'm like, this is it. This is the beauty of us shining and doing what we're meant to do as the body. Mm-hmm. But you really have to carry that humility to even give room for that to be possible. And then you have to give room for the empowering people how to think. And it's okay that we're all over the map sometimes. That's actually okay, because that's actually how we can grow. Can you imagine if I was in a place where I just had everyone thinking the way I thought, and made sure that was all that could happen? Like, you're just going to hit a lid. You just wouldn't grow anymore, because we're all fallible. We're not perfect. My own thoughts aren't right. I think I want to talk about one thing you addressed. I think is really important. I was in a leaders advance one time, and this conversation was happening quite a few years ago. And one of the questions came up about this theology / doctrine piece of like, well, can people just believe in anything? And Eric Johnson was answering the question. And he was like, he was kind of surprised. But he's like, we're not talking about Jesus. we're not saying like you can just believe in anything you want and it's all okay. We're going to be, peaches and cream. No, we're saying there is stances that we stand on. Jesus is the one true God, and all those things. Like, we're not talking about that as a negotiable. We're talking about the non-essential things that you can have a different eschatology. You can have a different interpretation of XYZ scriptures. You can have a different interpretation of your political stance or spiritual stance of the nation, or fill in the blanks. But Jesus is the essential. Like, that's a non-negotiable. So just to clarify, when we do say things like, "Oh, we have an empowering environment where people can believe what they want to believe," we're not talking about Jesus. We're talking about the non-essential things that really that's the beauty of the body and why we need one another. And I love what Bill's done over the years. Bill Johnson over the years has just brought in leaders and brought in people of different streams and different eschatology or theology for the purpose of they have something we need. And I want them to pour in and invest in our environment. And we want, through honor, valuing what they carry and who they are, we actually derive the benefit that they bring to the body of Christ. We don't agree on everything they say, but he's done that very intentionally over the years. And so, we find it beautiful and kind of normal that this would be an environment. And so I guess it's good that we do talk about it a little bit, like, oh, what we're experiencing is normal. It's actually the environment we've created, that everyone in our church body has a different thinking on what it is politically, what it is on spiritually, what it is on, fill in the blank. That's kind of on purpose.
Absolutely, and so you might look back at this year, and I've personally gotten questions of, I'm trying to think of which ones I could say, but things along the lines of like, oh, why aren't you talking about subject X? Why, hey, why aren't you making it mandatory that everyone wear masks? Why are you even having masks here? All these different conversations. And it's, again, it generally, I've found, comes from this mindset that we should be telling people what to do with their lives, with their beliefs, with all these things. And I can understand, because again, some of us grew up in a church culture where that was the role of the pastor. I am shepherding you towards the truth, Again, kind of how we've explained what happens there is you are limited by that person's handle on the truth, which by our nature is limited. And it also tends to elevate that person above everyone else, which is not really, in my view, the way that Jesus did it when he was here. He actually just promoted everyone, around him and empowered them shockingly quickly often, And so when we're teaching our messages, we're pretty much never trying to tell you what to think or what you should do. What we're trying to do is steward a culture. We're trying to steward the culture of this environment. We're trying to lay down some of the principles, the ideas, the cultural statements that create this environment where people get to be empowered and show up. And so, what that tends to mean is if there's something that you feel ought to be talked about, it's not necessary. I wouldn't necessarily think of it in the frame of reference of, well, why isn't the pastor saying what I believe or promoting this? Maybe that's something you should champion. Maybe that's something you should put out there. Again, I would suggest you do it humbly and do it with the understanding that you have, just like all of us, a partial understanding of the truth. But that's part of what we're trying to create as far as an empowering environment, is that we're all equipped to be ministers. We're all equipped to be disciples of Jesus. And so when it comes to the kingdom, you have authority to carry the messages that God's put on your heart. And just like any of us, that doesn't mean that you can't misinterpret, misunderstand, or make a mistake there. But learning how to share those messages is part of what it is to be an empowered disciple of Jesus, I think.
Yeah, it's really good. I think what I've been proud of about us over the last even couple of years is that we just have been not even extremely intentionally, like it's not like we're in a meeting where we're strategizing what's the messages for these next 2 months, like that doesn't happen. It's beautiful in that we, Vanessa, who's leading in the charge in our worship environment, and us as leaders are leading in speaking and teaching, Blake and Jen, and like what I love is with almost without intention, what has happened is we've never changed the subject of Jesus. And I think it's one thing I'm proud about us of is that we are always pointing people to where the solution is. We can address a left or right conversation or this or that or right and wrong conversation, but that would never be helpful. That actually would hinder what we're meant to do, which is always be pursuing Jesus. And so what I love is while all this has popped up, all these different, thoughts, opinions, desires, needs, questions, we are intentionally pointing people back to Jesus and not changing the subject of it's heaven come to earth. It's Jesus on the throne. He is the King. I'm gonna not sit on the throne and I actually let Jesus get on the throne. Like in a weird non-strategic way, we've kept the main thing. And I've been so proud of us for doing that. At the same time, while it's not strategic, it is what we want to do. Like that's what we do want to do. So in a non-strategic way, it is on purpose because we want to point people to Jesus and point people to where to get the solutions. I don't want to give people the solution for them. For any part of our environment for any amount of time, you would learn that we're empowered to manage our own, control me, and at a good day I can do that. On a very good day, and usually that doesn't work out too well. But I can't control other people. I can't direct or tell other people what to do with their life. It never really works out anyway. If you've been a parent for any amount of time, that you learn that doesn't work out. Our best thing is we can equip people to learn how to manage themselves and make their own choices. And that's what, when we point people back to Jesus, that's where the solution comes from, is their relationship with the Lord, where he says, I will guide you with my eye. He's the one that guides people and leads them. All that being said, the whole context of this environment does happen in a family. And so we do have spiritual fathers and mothers and parents and friends and sons and daughters that we do have that speak into our life. And so that's really, as we started seeing this swing to an apostolic environment, relationally driven, very empowered, I started learning what kind of keeps us on track, so to speak, that we don't get weird, because the environment we're talking about could get weird really fast, which is precisely why we probably didn't go down that road, was because there's some tools that are absolutely needed for an environment like this to succeed. And a lot of it is humility, it's honor, it's love, it's trust, it's relationship. It's messy. I mean, you go home for Thanksgiving, most people have a messy experience, right? It's usually not all everything's perfect and dandy. And if it is, maybe everyone's not showing up. We'll see. But if everyone shows up fully, which your family, you are known, you know them, usually it's very raw and can be messy, which is family. It's not that everybody's thinking the same thing that keeps them together. It's that they're family, they're connected, they're covenant, they're committed, they're relational. And so an environment that we're talking about that sustains the empowerment we're talking about would have to be one of humility and love and honor and commitment and trust. And if I have a spiritual fathers and mothers and people pour into my life going, hey, you might want to keep an eye on those two roads and make sure that feels good. I'm like, oh, that's helpful. I didn't see that. We don't have eyes in the back of our head. I need someone to help me see from the back of my head. Mm-hmm. I can't see it. I tell a funny story. Okay, I'll tell a funny story.
You should tell a funny story.
I used to cut my hair myself, right? I had trimmers, and I just do a buzz cut, like a no guard or something, or one or zero or something, just because it was easier for a time. And I remember I would cut my hair, and I'm like, man, I'm dialed. I'm looking sharp, cutting up my little ears, cutting this, man, I'm just looking tight. And then Quinn would come in, my wife, right? She'd come in and be like, man, you missed a big old patch right there. And I'd be like, man, I look like I got mange. I'm like, if I don't have people helping me see what I can't see, maybe we'll be walking around with mange thinking we're dialed. We got this thing figured out.
Yeah.
But the value of, oh no, I actually need people to help me see my blind spots. Mm-hmm. That's the part of family. That's relationship. I needed a dad growing up to show me things, that I couldn't see. I just didn't have the history or the experience to see that he could see. Like this is the nature of the environment we're creating, which there's a lot of requirements for an empowering environment that we're describing to work, which is what I love, is what we've heard the Lord on with. You've heard about Lindy's dream, Lauren's dreams, just the mandate for leadership, what we've been going after with just developing the leaders in our environment to begin to create a culture that is more vulnerable, transparent. That's all on purpose. And when we see that, I'm like, this is the solution to this questions that have been being asked. Yeah. Like, why are we this, or why are we that, or where do we stand here? Well, if we do this really well, it won't matter. It won't matter because we love each other and are actually part of each other's life and are empowering everyone to have this thought or that thought. That's the beauty. But we'll have to do this really well. Humility, love, honor, connection, covenant, trust. And that's scary, man.
Oh, it is. And we're about to run on time here, but I know that for some of you, this is a really different way to think or a different way to approach church. And I know that it can be comforting to be in an environment where I know that my pastor agrees with me. I know that I'm in a place where largely people agree with me. And I understand there's comfort in that. But, I think you only need to look at the internet for about 5 minutes to see lots of places where people have gathered around agreement. And what happens is they get stale, they get static, they become monolithic in thinking, in belief and understanding, and it quickly becomes unhealthy. And again, it's not even true to the kind of people that Jesus brought around himself. When you look at the disciples, there's such a different type of experience. There's fishermen, tax collectors, just all these different kind of people. People were frequently offended, Pharisees in particular, were offended by the kind of people that were hanging around Jesus. It's because it's messy. It's because it's not, you have to look this way exactly, because it's not about the rightness. Yeah. It's about the relationship. Yeah. What connects us is our relationship to each other and our mutual relationship to Jesus, along with our individual relationship to him. And again, that is less, it's funny, it feels less secure. It feels less solid. The weird reality is it's way more secure. It's way more deep, and it's way more lasting, and it can weather storms. Totally. Way better. Not to get to a whole big thing right at the end here, but there's a reason that the church has been so divided and so factionalized, and there's so many denominations. Because when you gather around what you believe or what your idea of truth is and agreeing upon that will change, that will adapt, that will shift. And as soon as we don't agree, it just can't sustain. And this is why Thanksgiving still happens, even if you fight with your family every time. It's because you have a connection that's deeper than your agreement. And that's something we can build on. And with honor, with love, with respect, with humility, we can actually not only influence each other, share the pieces of God's kingdom of truth, all these revelations that we carry with one another, but we can grow ourselves and grow our environment. And so it's a real exciting thing. Any other closing thoughts, Dan Weber?
Yeah, this is the key to being able to see the city changed. This is the key to be able to see culture in our environment, begin to look more like the kingdom of heaven, because we're becoming more like the kingdom of heaven. Bill Johnson will say, transform people, transform culture. Yeah. We can't do that on principles alone. Like we need this environment, this culture inside of us, and the result of us functioning differently in a world that functions different than that is very much the influence that we begin to shine a light on and say, hey, this is what's available, because it's different. It's different than the rest of the world functions, and the rest, not just the church, but the rest of the world. Yeah. So it's beautiful. I love it. Wouldn't want to see it any other way.
Yeah. So wherever you're at right now, we just bless you guys, and we just release the grace to carry humility, to carry honor, and to learn what it looks like to. Because it is a learning experience that never stops, to learn what it looks like to be bound together by relationship, by love, by family. And I just release peace on every single one of us, peace in our households, and the freedom to have strong opinions, to have strong ideas, to have strong convictions, but show up with love, show up with honor, and show up with as part of a family.
Yeah, so we just bless everything that's been just released this morning. And we just do also pray for anybody in our environment and anywhere. If you're listening to this on, from outside of our little space in Atlanta, we just pray for anybody that's just dealing with COVID, dealing with the quarantining. We just pray for anybody and their health. We just release grace, peace, and healing. And we just do continue to contend for a ban to the virus, that it just continues to lose its teeth as time goes on. And we pray for complete healing and restoration for anybody that's dealing with it currently, that there's no lasting effects, there's no long effects, and just a speedy recovery. And we pray for peace over these families as they're navigating this hard season. So, yeah, we just love you guys. We love you guys so much. And we're so excited about what the Lord's doing in our environment with our just in terms of the mandate for leadership, in terms of building a building, and just where we're growing. I don't know that we can even see the end of it yet, but we're so excited about what the Lord's doing, and so grateful that all of you guys are on this journey with us and are running alongside of us. So,
yeah, it's going to be beautiful. All right, so we'll be back in person next week, so you're welcome to join us in the tent, or continue. We'll be streaming as well, so you can join us online if that's your preferred method. Yep. And also, any other quick announcements? I think that was it.
I think that's just the main announcement.
Yes, next week that. Also, we're gonna have our offering now. We can put it at the end because that makes sense. Because we're at the end. So we're going to have all the ways to give kind of pop up on a little slide here. We really appreciate that. And again, we thank you guys so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.